Hey there, and welcome into University of Hoops, the show that gives you an inside look at the people making everything happen on your favorite basketball team. Today, we are excited to welcome Iowa State's women's assistant coach, Rob Jenkins. Coach Jenkins, welcome into the show, man.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Excited to be here.
Yeah, absolutely, coach. And you're heading into your first year as a D1 assistant coach, elevating roles from last season, which we're excited to get into. But wanted to start off with that role change. What are you going to be doing as an assistant on the staff, and what are some of your main responsibilities that you want to tell the people about?
I'm definitely a benefit of these new rules that are expanding access for young coaches to be assistants. And a lot of my role is staying the same from player development last year. I'll continue to focus on the same things there, but I'm adding more recruiting into my day to day. And like I've been able to go on the road already. And so that's been an exciting part of the journey. And I'm definitely lucky that Coach Finley believed in me and saw an opportunity for me to continue impacting the program at a higher level.
Coach, what's it like sort of with the transfer portal and how is that sort of ongoingly impacting, player development and all of that?
Um, I try not to think about the transfer portal most of the time of the year because if you're thinking about the portal, you already think about what's next, either for the player that you're working with or for yourself. And that's not great. I mean, obviously during postseason, you have to be finding the right fit, the right program, and a lot of it is knowing who you are. But, throughout the year, I really try to focus on who the student athlete is and trying to help them be the best, whatever they want to be. Every player has different goals and different dreams and you got to focus on that first and focus on helping the team. And then, in April and May, you can focus a little bit more on adding good additions that fit the right thing. And I think that's a good thing that we did here at Iowa State this year. We added 4 kids. All of them are awesome and all of them are great fits. We didn't necessarily go for, you know, the highest caliber. Kiki from Stanford Wayne, she's incredible, amazing, but wouldn't necessarily have been a fit. And so that's what we focus on. We focus on adding the best players who are the best fit.
Got it. Got it. Would you mind taking us through just kind of like what your day to day is like in the season? And I know obviously this is it's going to be different this year, but even take us back to last year. What's it like, being in a D1 program?
Yeah, it probably won't actually be that much different. Obviously, it depends on the day, but normally kind of get here early in the morning, crank out some scouts in the morning. Coach likes to meet in the morning as a staff, even if it's just brief touch base, see where all are at. He's not a huge micromanager, so it's a nice moment for him to just also, share his thoughts and opinions, and then we can move on. And then obviously we meet about each scout. Um, then we practice in the afternoon. So depending on the day, I normally have a couple players that come in early, get some extra shots up, and what's one of my favorite parts of the job is just being on the court, rebounding for them in the extra time. And so I normally do that a couple times a day, practice, and then work on a couple scouts to finish up the night. Game days are a little bit different. I try to take it a little bit easier in the morning, try to get some exercise in. It helps me calm me down and get me focused. Finish up I'm always working ahead on scouts, finish up anything that needs to be done for the next game or 2 games out the day of the game. And then from shoot around on, I'm always locked in and I like to rewatch. I'm in charge of opponent play calls for our games. I sit at the front of the bench. So I review any play calls that we already have, or I look once more through to find anything else that might have that gives us an advantage going into the game, or any notes we've had from the last game, depending if it's a conference opponent or not.
Got it. And I mean, you mentioned play calls there. Um, what is yeah? Take me through that, and even for the audience that may not be as familiar with that, what kind of goes into that?
Yeah, so being at the front of the bench, I'm in the best spot to hear or see any play calls, either from the point guard or from the head coach. Or now more and more coaches are doing an offensive coordinator style system where they have an assistant that runs all the play calls. I think Florida State women are doing that. I know our men's team does something similar to that. But I'm trying to find the play call so then I can catch it and I'll write down, the play, say the play. We all know horns, but if the play is horns, I'll write down the action, I'll write down the timestamp in my notes, and then next time they play it out, I'll call out the action on the court to their, hopefully our coaches and bench players echo it so that we can hear it. Unfortunately, it's pretty hard in our home arena since we average about 10,000 fans a game. I actually get more calls on the road, so it's a little bit of a downside there. But if I miss an action because I'm writing something down, I also have the iPad next to me, and so I'll pull up the play, and I'll write down, or I'll show. Sometimes I'll show our point guard or somebody in the huddle the play call. I'll tell them the call and I'll show them the action so that they're ready to guard it next time.
Coach, Cyclones looking like one of the top teams in the country heading into the season this year. Had a lot of freshmen on last year's team. Obviously, they're all back. What do you think it is about this group that makes them special and sort of gives you guys the ceiling that you're projected to have?
Obviously they're incredibly talented, but they play with such a joy and they play together and for one another. And it's pretty impressive. Like, every day they show up with smiles on their face, ready to work. They're in the gym here constantly. They finally got kicked out of the gym for the summer and told to go home for a couple weeks, but otherwise you probably hear ball bouncing in the background. Um, but really, it really is they all know their role and they all work so hard on and off the court to be the best teammates, to be the best players, and they share the ball superbly. I think we were one of the top 10 teams in assists in the country last year. We shoot the ball incredibly well at all positions, and it just really makes us hard to guard on offense, that's for sure.
Coach, want to transition now to your journey and how you got to where you are today. Take us back to the beginning. How'd you get into basketball and take the people through each of your stops to get to the point that you are now?
Yeah, so I got incredibly lucky. I grew up in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, which to me is kind of the home of college basketball. The state of North Carolina is, I 10 minutes from UNC's campus, 15 minutes from Duke's, 25 minutes from NC State's, and right there you've got three national championship programs. And my mom went to Wake, so there's another fantastic program. And I grew up watching uh, and going to UNC men's basketball game and women's basketball games. And from there, just a love for basketball was instilled in me. Like every kid in North Carolina, I could not escape basketball. I played all the way through high school, and I reached a point where I realized I was not going to be good enough for the level of school that I wanted to go to. And so I actually kind of got my first coaching job from my high school and AAU coach. He, incredible man, first of many coaches that impacted my journey. And my senior year, I had the opportunity to coach one of the ninth grade teams for my AAU program, and it was a really awesome experience. I loved it. I thought it was kind of going to be a one-off thing, just something fun to do when I had extra time from not playing anymore. And it turns out that it was kind of the first step in my journey. I then went to the University of Wisconsin, where the head coach at the time actually went to my high school in North Carolina in a crazy small world moment. And I got introduced by my high school basketball coach to him, and he's like, "Hey, you should reach out to him about being a manager." He gave me his email. I emailed Coach Sippis, and Coach Sippis told me what a manager does. I got to practice with the team, and about 2 years into my journey at Wisconsin, I took this something I thought was just gonna be fun free time activity at Wisconsin, and I realized that it's what I want to do, and I found it as my calling really. And yeah, from there I just worked my butt off, try to connect. I was lucky around good people who helped me, and I was able to land a hometown job as a GA back at UNC. And Coach Bankhart gave me an incredible opportunity to work for her, where I was able to learn and do so much. And then a couple years ago, Billy and Coach Finley came calling. They had heard about me and heard I did some good work, and they had a spot open here on staff, and they thought I might be a good fit. And luckily, I I got the job, and I've been blessed to be here at Iowa State since.
That's an awesome story, Coach. Appreciate you sharing all your stops along the way there. You've
Yeah.
touched going back to the beginning and stuff like earlier, you've touched a lot about player development. And I wanted to ask you, what's your favorite part about player development? And then in addition to the player development side, just what's your favorite part of the game on the strategic side, whether it be offense or defense or et cetera?
Yeah, so player development wise, I think it's a conversation, right? A lot of it is one on one, two on one. You're dealing with small groups. You're dealing on a very personal level with the athlete, and I think that's incredible for relationship building. I think it was Brad Stevens who said that if he's ever struggling to connect or understand a player, then he'll just go rebound for them, and it helps break down that barrier and it helps show that you're invested. And I mean, I love helping people succeed like that. That's a whole reason I'm a coach, and one of the many reasons I'm a coach. And And so when you're actively investing, I'm putting in the sweat equity next to you. Like I know we're both doing this together. It's really rewarding to see when, you know, they pull off something in a game or, they make a big jump in 3-point shooting, whatever it might be. That's a huge, delayed gratification and reward to it. And I really enjoy that. And I enjoy the personal interaction level of it. As far as strategic side goes, I've been a defensive guy. That's where I was. When I was a player, I was a defensive guy. I made sense. I had to do. I wasn't the most athletic, wasn't the most skilled. I had to do that extra layer of work and kind of be gritty and grind it out. And then I worked for two really good defensive coaches in Coach Banghart and Coach Sippis. But since I've gotten to Iowa State, Coach Finley is an offensive genius. It has forced me to rethink about basketball in a different way, and it's really helped push me and help me develop as a coach because now I'm starting to think about offense, and now everything is like, you know, it's almost like to use the word enlightened is exaggerating, but it's along those lines. And now I see it in a different way. I see it in his light, and I've combined that with my knowledge of defense. And Coach Finn's great on defense too. Here, it's we have our principles, but we really scout and we scheme the heck out of teams. Whereas some other places, like Coach Banghart, we have more of principles, and Coach Sip, we have more principles like that.
You've name dropped a lot of high level coaches throughout our conversation so far. And I wanted to just ask you on a mentorship level, what are some of those best nuggets and some of those best pieces of advice that you've gotten from these coaches along the way that you'd like to share?
Um, you know, I've been lucky. They're three amazing head coaches, three great people, and I think one of the constant reminders that all of them have had for me is just like the people who you surround yourself with are going to make the biggest impact in your life. So make sure they're good people. Um, you know, I when I was taking jobs, when I was calling, Coach Sip was one of the first people I called, even though I wasn't working for him anymore. Coach Banghart was a huge help. She, keep in touch. We talk about families. I mean, they're good people, and I think that's incredibly important. They also all have the mindset if you work really hard, like things are going to work out, and you don't have to do the most. You just have to be really good at what you're good at. I know that sounds silly, but like find what you're good at and be really good at that, and then develop everything else.
Got it. Got it. And kind of flipping that question and going into the next section of our conversation, want to ask you what advice and lessons have you picked up that you would lend others as advice for, just surviving and advancing in the basketball industry?
Yeah. So one of I've talked about my head coaches, but it's also been my sports staffs that have been incredibly important to me and been super helpful. One of those people is Sean Sullivan, who just got hired as an assistant coach at Iowa, but worked with me at Carolina. So uh, happy to see that for him. Not happy to face him. He was a constant reminder for me. He had been in many of the same shoes as I had been, and he I am very excited and very energetic, and I can get very enthusiastic about things, and I want to do everything. And he was a constant reminder to me of like, make sure your head is where you are, and you can't get too ahead. You can't be thinking about the next job. You can't be thinking about the next step. Like when it's time for you to recruit, it's time for you to recruit. When it's time for you just to scout and do film, when I was GA, that's when it's time to do it. Um, you know, he and he was like, it doesn't hurt to ask people. He reminded me to do that all the time. Just because I think I know something doesn't mean I actually know something. So if I'm unsure, ask him. And this was as GA, ask somebody else in the business. You can learn from others. And so Sean's was a huge ally and huge mentor for me as well. And I think that's something that's underrated is a lot of credit is given to head coaches, and rightfully so, but also for the support staff that you're around, and you can use them as a resource and lean on them. They're a lot of really smart people that aren't head coaches too.
Coach, just in terms of you know, like all of the things that you've done in your young coaching career so far, and even extending, past coaching back to when you were a player, to go from like player to manager to coaching now at the assistant level at the D1 level, of course. you've seen you've been able to be part of the evolution of basketball and see how it's changed, you know what I mean, through each step that you've been on. So how do you kind of use that to your advantage and as a coach now, and how have you seen the game changed?
To call me a player, considering my career ended high school, is a loose term, but I appreciate you and putting my ego a little bit there. Um, it, it's constantly changing. I mean, we don't even know what, because college athletics is changing so quickly too. We don't even know what the shape of our sport's going to be in 5 years. But I think even through all the change, and you'll see it. I mean, Steph Curry's changed from when we were coming up versus the kids now, and the emphasis on shooting, which we love. That's a huge thing of us at Iowa State, and we're excited about that more and more kids can shoot, which is great. But it's continuing is the underlying thing is just good people. Like, you want to be a good person, how you act, how you treat others. And Coach Finley is a huge proponent of this. The Iowa State way is our culture around here. It signifies how we do everything. And the fact that he's been able to keep that standard and find that's the same, type of people, same type of staff, players that can fill that standard and that culture for 29 years in one place is pretty incredible. And it's a testament to, though, as things change more, like, you have to be more consistent in what you are and who you are, and the outcomes will follow.
What would your advice be to student managers, just to sort of like make the most of those opportunities to then sort of propel you to the next steps as you've been able to do?
Yeah, no, I think the number one thing is, well, there's a couple of things. One, invest in yourself. So whether that's, reading books about coaches, I finished Pat Summitt's book, Nick Nurse's book, invest in yourself, be better, watch videos online about coaching, do the hard work that helps you set up. So, and don't be afraid to take opportunities that might be volunteer. I had to teach PE, 3 classes of PE each semester my first year at Carolina as a GA. Like, don't be afraid to take an opportunity. Now, I'm not saying you need to go out there and, run yourself into the ground just to make it work, but go work camps, go do something, go volunteer your local high school in the summers too. There's 100 different ways you can get into coaching, and there's no one right or wrong way to do it. So invest in yourself and take a risk. The other thing is network. And I don't mean just emailing any random coach and just being like, hey, I'm blah, blah, blah. I want a GA job or whatever job you want after graduation. Create meaningful relationships. And I'm guilty of this myself. I probably sent thousands of emails of people that I didn't really have any connection with or didn't have any real meaningful connection to, and talked once or twice and then have moved on. But the people that I have created meaningful relationships have helped me do a lot of different things. Helped me get my job at all my jobs have come from meaningful relationships that I have built. Um, whether it was my high school coach, because I was, for whatever reason, he thought I was a good guy and he liked me and thought I could be pretty good at coaching. He said I should check out this job at Wisconsin. Then at UNC, I had somebody else vouch for me there, and then somebody else vouched for me at Iowa State. And so, be very intentional about how you go about it. You know, don't try to find the job right away. Don't ask for, X, Y, and Z. Instead, ask to learn from them. Ask to be like if there's an area that you want to learn from, if you want to be the best video coordinator in the country, that's your goal. Reach out to people in the industry who do that, and all levels. Some of the best people aren't necessarily at the Power Five level. Some of the best people are at lower levels because they have to do more with less. Um, just reach out, learn, develop a relationship, remember the small things, and then eventually it'll pay off. Don't expect the payout to be in 1 year or 2 years. Expect the payout to be in 3, 4, 5, 10 years down the line.
That's some great advice, coach. I'll just add one more. Use University of Hoops. You know what I mean? Use it as a
Yeah,
resource. Watch this interview. Come back. Watch our other interviews
yeah,
as
definitely. I mean,
well.
there's so many great interviews. I got uh, caught. Oh, sorry. I was diving down the wormhole last night watching all these interviews. So there's a lot of good stuff on this platform, and there's a lot of platforms out there you can learn from too. I mean, just type stuff into YouTube if you need to.
Absolutely. YouTube University, coach. That's some great advice.
Also,
Um,
one other thing about networking, and sorry
yeah.
to interrupt, is
No,
that
no, no, please.
it's never too early to start. If you're a high schooler or you're a freshman in college and you think you might want to do this, just reach out. If you're a high schooler, reach out to the local college. There's 360 plus schools in the United States. There's got to be one that's close to you. Use that as a connection. Just be like, hey, I'm from the area. I love to learn about what you do. You know, you might not get a response the first time, but eventually you'll get a response. And so just start early. And because the earlier you start and the more meaningful you make it, the bigger it will be.
That's some great advice. Appreciate that, coach. Next thing I want to ask you is, of course, there are, just like with any profession, there are, good things and bad things and challenges and then rewards with doing this profession. What's something, and you mentioned, maybe it's like a young kid who's in high school or who's a freshman in college. To anybody out there that's thinking about wanting to do what you do, what would you tell them? Like, what's something they should know before really deciding that they want to do this that maybe wouldn't be known by just the general public?
I don't know. I mean, obviously it's nice to get a bunch of the gear and be around cool events and do cool things, but it is hard work. um I think you have to be committed, and you might not necessarily know if this is what you want to do long term, but you can't go into the process or the idea of coaching and be like uncommitted in it. So if you don't know if it's what you want to do or not, you still have to work 100%, or you're not going to enjoy it. You have to constantly remind yourself about why you're doing it. You have to figure out what your why is, what's your reason for it. And I think if you can be committed and you can uh, remember your why, then a lot of things will work out. And I think that kind of applies for all things, though. And it's not necessarily a coaching thing. So whatever it is in terms of your goal, and not that I know that much. I mean, I'm just starting my journey still.
That was a great segue, coach, because the last question, and we asked this to all of our guests, is what is your why? And you just touched on it there, that's an important thing. So tell the people what your version of that is.
Yeah, so I'm the son of a college professor, and my dad is a fantastic professor. He teaches a lot of small, high level classes, and it's very obvious to me the impact that he has on his students. And so I grew up witnessing that. Never did I think I was going to be a professor or a teacher. Um, Turns out I'm a basketball coach, which is just pretty much the same thing, just a different classroom. A lot of it is, I think the college age is such an important time in life, and I know I myself went through like a massive personal growth in college as well. It's I want to make an impact, and I think this is the age that I can help do it the most. I will want to make a difference in my players' lives, whether it's helping them achieve their basketball dreams, whether it's helping them achieve their personal dreams. And maybe it's because I grew up in Chapel Hill and I'm nostalgic for what the ideals of college basketball is from Coach Smith and Coach Roy Williams. I mean, those are two of my heroes growing up. There's something just uniquely special about coming in every day, building relationships with the players and seeing them grow and seeing them do bigger things.
Coach, what are some of your long-term aspirations in the profession? What are your, and I grew up around UNC and of course, being at a school like Iowa State is incredible and is an incredible achievement, at your age. What are your long-term goals?
I'm never going to pretend to be something that I'm not, and I have no idea what my long term goals are. Right now, it's just to be the best that I can and be at the highest level I can, making the biggest difference. And as much as I talk about making a difference, I'm really freaking competitive, and I want to win as many basketball games as possible. So right now, I'm just trying to win as much and make a big impact and be as good a person as possible. And I think the rest will figure it out. I've got plenty of time. I've never been much of a planner, anyways. So
Iowa State assistant coach Rob Jenkins. Coach Jenkins, thanks so much for joining Hoops U.
thank you. It was a pleasure.
Absolutely, and thank you for watching another episode of University of Hoops, the show that's taking you behind the scenes of your favorite basketball team with interviews every single week. Thanks for watching Coach Jenkins' interview, and we will see you with another one next week.